Hello there. Welcome back to Side Hustlein'. Last time on this series, I told you about my goals for 2020. So, assuming that we would have a 2020, perhaps naively thinking that we were going to have a 2020. I mean, we certainly didn't have an April. Whizzed right past. I mean, we had quite the March, but April went lickety-split. Apparently it's May now, which is very strange. I hope all of you are well, but I thought today I would tell you a little bit about how I've been doing and how I'm feeling about my 2020 goals here in May of 2020. Let's get into it. I want to begin by talking about expectations. And these kind of thoughts were sort of spurred by Hank Green's recent video called The Sudden Obliteration of Expectation. So I really appreciated that video from him, and I found it helpful. And I want to talk a little bit about some thoughts surrounding that same sort of ideas. About why losing the life we were imagining is a loss too. Losses come in different sizes, but they are all worthy of being grieved. We have all collectively lost the 2020 we were planning on. It wasn't even up to us. It changed, and now we have to change too. Our expectations for the year have to change, and our expectations for ourselves have had to change. As I said in my last video in this series, my main goal for 2020 for the year was to send out query letters to literary agents and sign with an agent this year. That was what I had hoped would happen. Some part of me, the hopeful bit, was thinking vaguely, oh, I'll get an agent this year, then maybe a deal with a publisher soonish after that, and if the channel keeps growing and I get a book out, I can maybe move out and start my quote-unquote real life, like next year maybe, even in like 2021. 2021, coincidentally, will be the year I turn 30 years old, by the way. That was the story I wanted to tell myself, the one I had hazy lingering on my best days in the background of my brain, the narrative I wanted to come true, as far-fetched and dreamy as it was, because we all know that the publishing process has never run that smooth. But in an ideal future, in my ideal vision of my own future, that's how it would have gone. But that can't happen in 2020 anymore. I've been waiting for the time and the right time to send my book baby off to preschool, but publishing is on fire. The entire place in chaos. Book tours canceled, release dates pushed back indefinitely, agents distracted, and the economy at large in teetering disarray. I love this story too much to not give it the best chance I can. I'm not sending this book baby out into a world on fire. I have had internal setbacks. This is external. There is a lot to grieve in the world right now. Big losses and little losses and personal losses. And this is mine. It's not as monumental as others have, but it's still scary for me. Some days I think, oh, publishing, bookstores, they've been through worse. It'll all recover, and the dream that I had isn't gone, it's just paused. The bookend, the end cap display at Barnes & Noble, or our local here in Colorado, Tattered Cover, seeing the real hardcover with its dust jacket placed on a little stand at the bookshop, that's still available. It totally can happen. Publishing has been through wars. It's all going to be fine. It'll all settle down and recover. And some days I think maybe most bookstores aren't going to make it through this. And without bookstores, you can't have the dream of having an end cap at the bookstore, really. Maybe the industry will be incredibly cautious after this. Too cautious for me and my, queer story. It doesn't center around queer issues, but I don't know. It's hard to say what they're going to be taking risks on now when they've lost this much money and this much time. Some days I think it won't happen now, that I missed my only chance. And some days I think if I had gotten that agent last year, if I had gotten a deal last year, I could be one of those people who are now being told that their book will not come out when they thought it would, that their tour is canceled, and that they don't know that the dream that they were suddenly guaranteed that they were so close to, if it will ever happen. And timing, I don't really believe in fate, but timing could just be everything. And maybe I didn't miss my chance, but I dodged a bullet. It's just hard to know, and impossible to know, really. And some days I think I have so many chances of another kind for a different version of my dream, of my future. And in this time of stalled reflection and nervousness and uncertainty on such a global scale, I have begun to question my own dreams, what they look like, what I actually want when I imagine that, publication day that I want so very much, or have told myself that I want so very much, that I've put into the narrative of the story I want for myself. Do I want to see my book on an end cap, or do I want engaged readers eager for more about the characters and worlds I can't get enough of escaping into? Do I want a fancy contract and an advance and the legitimacy bestowed by a publisher? Or do I want to have full control over my work, when it's released, how it's released? From my research, it seems that most debut authors' advances are around $5,000 to $10,000. To make more than that ever from a single book, it has to do quite well. It has to make back that advance before you even start making any royalties. And even then, it's not like the royalties per book are, astronomical. And if it doesn't do well, you may never publish again. The sequels you perhaps planned or hoped for will not happen. And now the rights are shared between you and your publisher, and you may not have the right to publish those sequels even on your own after that. Which, wow. So even if you are traditionally published, you have to do quite well to make a living off of being an author. Some people who are traditionally published cannot quit their day job, as it were. Many who are traditionally published cannot quit their day job. And some people who are traditionally published go on to, become very, very, very successful. So there's a wide pendulum swing there. And the same is actually true of self-publishing. There is cream that rises to the top of even self-publishing. It's less and less viewed as a zero-chance endeavor. Although I've always portrayed it as such here in my brain and here on Side Hustlein as well. But I'm starting to see more and more the fact of how similar the two are. Sometimes I begin to wonder what is so different about these two scenarios. You have to do wildly well either way if you want to make it your career, with like a capital C career, That's right. I may just be coming around a bit here. The world changes, and so must I. Am I willing to give up one version of what I dreamed my life could look like for another that is different, but maybe just as good? For all that I know, maybe better. Which is to say, in this time of chaos, I am feeling better and better about Plan B, an alternate story of what my future could look like, about the sudden obliteration of expectations. It's scary not knowing what is going to happen. And it's also maybe freeing? Depends on the hour, the day, the week. But I'm less scared now than I used to be. And it feels lighter, almost. I don't have to have a capital C career, make the New York Times bestseller list, have traditionally accepted markers of legitimacy and success to be creatively fulfilled, to live a good life, to be happy. So that's the good days, I guess. There have been dark ones too. Ones without, chance, or ones where no plan seems possible. I think humans like having a plan. I think we like having a trajectory. And when all of that is derailed, it feels very stressful and scary. But here, as we enter May of 2020, I'm starting to like Plan B, the worst case scenario in some ways that I've always thought of. More and more. It's starting to look less and less scary. And, the meanest part of my brain says, that's you giving up before you even tried. And the rest of me hopes that that is just a nice balance of realism and hope, I suppose. Anyway, let's talk about business instead, and kind of where I'm at with my various side hustles, because that is the name of the game here. So for YouTube, I did have a couple of lookbooks that have been postponed in some ways. They're coming out soon now, but they were meant to come out earlier in the year. But for various reasons, like me being a little scatterbrained because of extra levels of stress, And then also not having all of the supplies on hand and then shipping taking longer for things during this, naturally. I didn't have everything I needed, and so now I do have everything I needed finally, and my motivation is at a good level to continue. I can go ahead and do some of the lookbooks I had planned to have already finished earlier in the year at this point. So some new lookbooks are coming up, and we all know how I like playing with all that fun stuff. So that's coming up here soon on YouTube, on the channel, I suppose. And then as far as like behind the scenes YouTube things, you'll remember I had a day job last year, a part-time job that I went to, and the income, it was so unstable and the income was so small, just enough basically to cover my bills, that I was like, if I could make the same amount of money on YouTube, then I wouldn't need to have this day job that keeps throwing off my schedule and really impeding progress for me in my other work. And so I left my day job when my YouTube ad revenue got to a point where I could pay my bills. Now, unfortunately, although more people are home and you would think are binge watching all kinds of stuff, including YouTube, the ad rates or the advertising on YouTube is way down because people or companies aren't advertising or aren't spending their advertising money the same way they were. So my YouTube revenue is 1/4 probably of what it was in say December, January. And that partially is because in December ad rates are really high because of Christmas shopping ads. So December is always a bit inflated, but it was a bit of a surprise to see just how far the ad rates drop here in spring. So if it were not for Patreon and the support my patrons have given me, I would be freaking out right now because my YouTube revenue is not enough to cover my bills anymore. So it would be very bad for me if I hadn't launched Patreon, which is something I did since I last spoke to you here on Side Hustlein, is I launched my Patreon page, and thank goodness, because my patrons are the only thing that's keeping me financially afloat here. But please don't ever feel bad if you can't or don't want to support me on Patreon. I totally understand. It's totally fine. At this moment, I just am so thankful that I launched this year because otherwise I'd be drowning. Yikes. As far as my other ventures, let's say the Etsy shop, that's also, kind of on pause right now. I was doing pretty okay with the Etsy shop and I was having a lot of fun with it, really. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time to do. Each thing isn't difficult, but it just takes a lot of time to photograph everything, to steam everything, then photograph everything and do the listings and make post office runs and stuff like that. But I was having a lot of fun with it, except for now, of course, although some lockdown restrictions are being lifted, in Colorado, I think we're pretty strict still, which I'm actually pleased about because my dad still has to go to work and I would rather, the world be safer around him since he still has to go to work. And my mom works from home, I work from home, my brother works from home. So the rest of us can kind of stay on lockdown, not without much problem, but my dad still has to go to work. And so I would rather the world out there be safer for him. So if we stay on lockdown a little bit longer here in Colorado, that would make me happy. And I certainly am not planning on resuming my going out the way I would before, which wasn't that often, but I would meet up, go to dinner with my friends or go thrifting every few weeks. But I'm not going to be resuming kind of normal business as usual for a while. And for my Etsy shop, that means no new stock, basically. I do have some things that I bought back in February that I haven't listed. So I really need to get it together and put those things up on the shop so that I can get those things out. They're very safe items since I bought them in mid-February before all of this nonsense started happening. But I haven't been super comfortable going to the post office and stuff like that anyway. So, and I don't have a lot of materials for packaging. So I would have to go to buy packing materials before I could go to the post office to ship things. But I mean, I'm totally willing to do that now, I think. But it was just an extra thing I didn't want to think about much. So I didn't list anything new during the last couple of months here. But I do have some stock that I bought back in February that I can put up, and that will help, offset the losses from YouTube revenue not really coming in. So I really do need to get on that. This whole model that I have going on here in my side hustling career here is to have multiple income streams. And so with YouTube dial turned way down, the Etsy shop dial turned way down. Those are two sources of income for me. So without them. Luckily, I can still cover my bills thanks to Patreon, and I don't have many because I live at home, but it's hard to like save up capital to start new ventures or to get myself out of my parents' house, which of course it's nice to be quarantined with other humans. So it's not so bad right now. But I also, if I never hear another Styx concert played loudly through the walls again, it'll be fine with me. You know, speaking of other possible ventures of mine, sewing patterns. I talked a little bit about these on Instagram recently, or asked for some feedback basically about sewing patterns in general, because I'm really trying to work through exactly what I want to do. It's very expensive to get patterns graded if they are complex, if they have many pieces, that is. So like something that has like a 4-piece collar facing and like a 3-piece sleeve and like lots of pieces going on is more expensive to have graded and sized, because it's like you pay per pattern piece per size almost. Like really you pay by hour, but like the more pattern pieces and the more sizes you want, the more expensive it's going to be to have done. I think I made a huge mistake on Instagram by not mentioning that I wouldn't be doing the grading myself. So it wasn't just a matter of me putting in more time. I'm going to be sending it out to have it professionally graded. So any pattern I do. So it is a cost per size, cost per difficulty level of the patterns. And like so many of the things I make are very simple and not that different from one another. Like I usually just change like the neckline or like where the darts are, but that's such easy modifications that I would rather perhaps do a block pattern or perhaps several different block patterns and then, you know, have a booklet on how to modify those blocks into the style of dresses that I usually make, because I would just feel terrible being like selling a dress that's like, here's this V-neck dress and here's this like sweetheart neckline dress. And it's like, they're the same. They're the same. It would cost silly amounts of money for me to have each of my dresses graded when they are really so similar and can be all drafted very easily from a block. So I'm thinking about doing possibly block patterns and then like a booklet on how to modify them. And of course, videos here on the channel on how to modify them, because I do that kind of already here. So that's kind of where my head is at with those, but I'm still working through like saving up enough money to have a pattern graded. I might be doing, I mentioned this on Instagram as well, but I might be scanning and like trying to digitize my own personal patterns. So like my size, the patterns that I have in my sewing room that I use, and making those available to start with. Just, I'm going to call them the B series, I think. This is all subject to change, but I'm thinking of having a B series, like B series, of patterns that are all just my exact patterns. So if any of you have similar measurements to me, or know how to grade yourself, and you want my patterns, you could have access to those, I guess. So that's kind of where my head's at with those moving forward. But I still have a lot of work to do on sewing pattern stuff, but I am like kind of moving forward with it. Whereas before it was just super on the back burner, but now I'm thinking I'm going to have the time and need to invest the time in getting that off the ground, possibly. I've actually found sewing really helpful during lockdown here. Luckily for me, I'm a hoarder when it comes to fabric. So I have lots of stuff in my stash that I've been kind of doing a little bit of stash busting here, especially while I was like kind of on hold with the projects for my lookbooks. So I couldn't really work on those. And so I started working on some other stuff that I just had laying around that was like, oh, one day I'll get to that dress, or one day I'll get to that fabric. So I kind of went through those, and you saw some of those dresses here on the channel in that recent roundup video I did. But yeah, it's been nice to kind of work with my hands, because my brain has been a little bit of extra stress and like swinging between like days where I'm like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be maybe even better than I thought it would be. And then it'll be like days where I'm like, everything is terrible. You're never going to get the things you want the most. It's bleh. So it's just like when your brain is swinging between these extremes, it's nice to just be like, how about just do this, sew some darts. And it's like, okay, yeah. It's almost easier. Like, I feel like almost the same about cooking too. Like cooking something, I have to like focus on that. And so I can't be too much in my own head. So sewing and cooking. Thank you, HelloFresh, basically. It almost seems odd that I haven't done a side hustling yet this year, because we are like, what is it, like, you know, a third of the way through the year here. And I haven't updated you on how I've been doing in this context, but I've been trying to make content that was still like my normal kind of stuff to help, you know, entertain people during this wild time, or like to have a reliable format that people can turn to when they don't want to hear about the madness anymore. They just want to watch some frilly dresses, and I'm here for that. But I do want to continue this series because, as I always say, it's like my diary for myself, and sometimes I do look back on my older side hustling videos just to see like how far I've come from then. And that's kind of why I started wanted to do this series in the first place, is more as a personal record of this process for myself. It's odd that I really thought I would have queried or like made progress on the literary agent front by now. Here we are, side hustling 14, I think this one is. But I swing between being really upset about that and really fine with it, weirdly enough. I'm more and more okay with it now because I think I'm accepted more and more how long of a process is going to be if I do decide to go the traditional publishing route, which is that I've always thought I would. But I'm more and more comfortable with the idea that like if that doesn't work out and I have to, oh bummer, I guess I'll just have to self-publish. Like trying to think about it not that way. It's just because, so much drivel. That's so much, just when anyone can publish anything. The reason that self-publishing has such a bad rap is because things are not being edited or vetted or, and a lot of things get published that would never have been traditionally published. And that's why they've been self-published. But there's a lot of things that are self-published that like, if they had hit the right agent and right editor, totally would have been traditionally published beforehand. Or things that are self-published and then do well enough that they come out in print as well, or the print rights are sold. So I don't know. I am thinking a lot more about self-publishing. I'm trying to stop being such a elitist about it, I guess, which is not easy for me because I'm very much a person who gets set in her ways very easily. So to try and change my opinion about something isn't always the easiest, but I would rather learn to change and hopefully be more optimistic in some ways if I can. So I'm working on it a little, kind of trying to. But as something that like I've always thought of as like plan Z, like, oh my God, if I like, am about to die and I never got published, I guess I'll self-publish then as like a last resort. Like if I'm on fire, then I will self-publish as like a last resort. But now I'm thinking of it less as a last resort and more as of just another option. I don't think this is not something that would be like in any time soon, by the way. I'm thinking, like next year I will reevaluate and consider if I'm not where I want to be. Otherwise, I might need that as an income stream. I might not be in the place where I can wait 10 years for a publishing deal because I need to be able to have an income, or another source of income to add to my side hustle, and that hopefully will all pull together to make it so that I can afford rent somewhere. I need that sooner rather than later, and I can't really afford to wait 10 years for that end cap display for $5,000 at Barnes & Noble. Like, I need stability sooner. And do I care more about having that legitimacy, having that stamp of approval, than I care about talking about my stories with readers, which is what I am most excited to do. I think I'm more excited about that and feedback from readers and talking to readers about issues and stories than I am about the actual publication side of it. I don't know. It's all very nebulous and weird, as we can see, as we can tell. So hopefully I'll be able to edit this into something intelligible, but good God. And again, I am just kind of rambling as usual here. I haven't really put my thoughts together about this kind of stuff. These are all just like things that are floating around in my brain right now. Still, I haven't come to conclusions. I haven't decided on things at all yet, really. And so I'm kind of just throwing this out into the brain space, the space here of my diary that are these videos. So hopefully you don't mind. But this is just the kind of stuff that I've been thinking about recently while here in lockdown, staying safe inside my house, which is my normal sort of MO anyway. We all know I don't go out much. I have my notes here. I do want to give a shout out to my top tier patrons who are literally keeping me alive right now. So thank you so much to Che, Brianne, Karina, Ellen, Gabby, Carol, Lacey, Lynn, Margaret, Nancy, and Rhonda. You are literally keeping me going, keeping these videos going, letting me live, really. And thank you to all of my patrons equally, really. Thank you so much for helping support me and my channel and my work, all my creative work, really. And thank you to all of you who watch these videos, especially Side Hustling, especially to the end of a Side Hustling video. Like, you have to make it through a lot of me mumbling on and on to get to this part of a Side Hustling. But thank you to all of you who watch my videos and support the content I create. There's just no thanks enough, really. You're the ones giving me my life, in some ways giving purpose to my life right now, as well as allowing me to live it practically as well. I'm sorry this was such a strange entry into this series, but some diary entries, I guess, are weird and strange. I hope all of you are staying safe out there, staying sane out there. I know it's just such a weird, nebulous, chaotic, and like changey, weird, stressful time for everybody. So I hope you are doing well, and I hope I have more progress and like concrete thoughts arranged for you next time on this series. We'll see where the world is at in a couple of months. Let's hope for the best, okay? Yeah, all right.